This is Sleeping in Trees, the audiobook. Chapter 17. The Lincoln Gets New Treads. My dad was a Lincoln man. The luxury car of choice in my neighborhood was either a Lincoln or a Cadillac. In the 60s, the arrival of the German sedan was embryonic, not even at the point of infancy. Toddlerhood for the Mercedes was years away. BMW was still making bicycles. Buick and Oldsmobile weren't even in the same league. Pontiac was the sporty brand. Chevy? It was a hot rod for kids. It was held, at least by my parents and a few neighborhood friends, that the Cadillac was the flashier of the two iconic Land Cruisers. To their thinking, the Lincoln was more refined and sophisticated. It was a more understated touring car, perhaps more Republican. So every 3 or 4 years, my dad would proudly head down to the local Lincoln Mercury dealer and trade in his beloved Lincoln for a shiny new one. He would initiate the elaborate process by spending evenings poring over the most enticing glossy brochures Madison Avenue could dream up while sipping a scotch. As the night progressed, he would become increasingly impressed and enamored of this finely engineered vehicle. Being a full-blooded Scot, as we sat around after dinner, he would begin to grouse about the price increases for a bit and then inevitably review the brochure yet again, working his way through the many new features of this impressive automobile. It was a ritual as predictable as it was entertaining. Then one day, Dad would abruptly head off to the local dealer and trade the old one for a brand new model. Of all the Lincolns that ever graced our garage, actually was never in the garage, as there was too much other stuff in the garage, my all-time favorite was an indigo blue early 1960s hardtop with suicide doors. For obvious reasons, automobile marketing departments have long avoided using this description for rear doors with hinges in back rather than in front. The name describes the unfortunate result of a backseat occupant reaching to close a door while in motion, only to be jettisoned into an adjacent creek or oncoming traffic by the heavy door jerked wide open by momentum and wind. The interior was clad in buttery navy blue leather, and the horn was actuated by a touch-sensitive rubber rim built right into the steering wheel. How cool was that? One sunny Saturday afternoon, a few of my crew and I were messing around my garage, drinking warm Coca-Colas from the wooden crates stacked in the corner. We'd figured out how to pop the bottle caps off on the forks of our Stingrays, so we could drink them any time without tipping off my mother. Dad pulled up and parked his Lincoln. He stepped around the car and informed us that he had just installed a full set of brand new tires. He stopped for a few minutes to admire the pristine white walls. One could even see the tiny rubber whiskers that all new tires seem to have along the sidewalls. We always wondered what purpose they served. Over time, they seemed to just disappear. While we looked on, he worked his way into the house, always eager to find a cool, air-conditioned space inside. It was not an easy journey for him. The rheumatoid arthritis affecting his spine and the overflowing garage made it more and more difficult to navigate. With 4 exuberant boys, numerous dogs, cats, reptiles, and all their incidental flotsam, our garage had become, over the years, a disorganized pile of junk. It's odd that my neighborhood crew never commented on my father's arthritic hunchback posture. The vertebrae from the middle of his back to the top of his spine were completely fused in a sharp curve, so to turn and look at something, he had to swing his shoulders completely around. His head and neck could not swivel. This is why so many times when I asked him to throw a football with me in the front yard, he demurred. He always said he had a project to finish, and that made sense since he always had many projects underway. Then one day, when I was about 12 years old, I understood. I remember about that time asking my mother why Dad was all hunched over. Was he in pain? She explained that he was in constant pain. During World War II, he had started out as a flight instructor. Before long, he was teaching scores of pilots how to fly fixed-wing aircraft. He was quickly promoted to command a squadron of B-24 Liberators, massive flying fortresses loaded with thousands of pounds of bombs. Gunners were stationed fore and aft to fend off assaults from enemy planes that would swoop up out of nowhere to knock them out of the sky. This was a nerve-wracking affair. Their missions included nightly bombing runs over Japan, 24-hour-long sorties departed from dark runways. Cockpit temperatures were below freezing. These journeys to the drop zone would be interspersed with intense cannon fire by ground defense batteries. All the while, they would be dealing with the horror of lost planes and comrades, plus the mayhem of trying to return to the base intact, with numerous casualties and damaged aircraft flying on fumes. It was a level of stress that few today can even comprehend. With a chronically poor diet, K rations at best, Dad dropped from 160 pounds at 6'1" to 130 pounds by the end of the war. Mom was convinced that this physical and emotional stress, over a period of several years, created the perfect environment for rheumatoid arthritis to develop. The medical profession knew little about cause or cure, so he just popped aspirin throughout the day and made the best of it. Remnants of war. Back in the driveway, we continued to mill around and cajole one another. At some point, Dinkle hurled a Coca-Cola bottle at Monkey. Of course, it missed by a mile, but accurately hit the concrete garage wall and shattered into jagged pieces. A small bottle-throwing fray ensued with more breakage, until we all realized this was going to be a heck of a mess to clean up, and the melee petered out. For some reason, I decided, in the interest of humor and showmanship, to pretend that I was going to place large chunks of jagged broken glass under my dad's 4 new tires. Rather than pretend, I actually did it. My foolhardy plan was formulated impulsively within seconds, with little thought, and inspired a nervous and uneven laughter amongst the crew as they realized it was a pretty bold and scary stunt. Then things took a bad turn. Something distracted us, and within moments we had mounted our bikes and were racing down the road, hell-bent for some destination I can no longer recall. It was most unfortunate. As bad luck would have it, my mother decided she needed something and stirred my dad into action to run another errand. He had been out most of the day running errands already, including buying 4 new tires. But apparently whatever Mom needed was not on the original manifest. Out he went through the garage, probably anticipating the joy that thrills most men when gliding smoothly down the road on a set of brand new, superbly balanced tires. As I raced alongside Lobster, I was struck by a most sickening and gut-wrenching realization. An overwhelming visual appeared in my mind's eye of my father ambling out through the garage as he headed towards his Lincoln in a Saturday afternoon errand, with 4 jagged chunks of broken Coca-Cola bottle glass strategically placed beneath each of his superbly balanced new tires. No. Yes. I slammed on my brakes and brought my bike to a broad, sliding, gravel-spewing halt. In an instant, I was pumping my skinny legs as fast as they have ever pumped before, heading straight for home. I held in my tiny stomach the sickening knowledge that if bad things could happen, they would, and most assuredly they already had. Dad shuffled over to his Lincoln and opened the driver's side door. I was a block away. He hunched down to clear the door jamb and slid onto the smooth, navy leather bench seat. He turned the key in the ignition, and the engine jumped to life. I was racing past Junkle's house now and could see the end of our driveway. He slipped the column shifter into reverse, smiled, checked his rearview mirror for children, bikes, and perhaps a basset hound, and pressed the gas. I skidded to a stop at the end of my driveway, heaving and out of breath, and watched in horror as he rolled backward with a crunch and a hiss. Only once did my dad spank me hard. It was that day. The following Monday, when I got home from school, I headed into my room to dump my books. As I tossed them on my bed, I noticed an official-looking document placed quite prominently on my desk. I picked it up, and my stomach sank for the second time in 18 hours. It was a paid invoice for a second set of shiny, brand-new tires, whiskers included. Oh, Gita. Oh, Gita. Next up is Chapter 18, and it's called Gita and the Good Doctor.